Arizona enforces its 1864 abortion ban. Enforcing it. It's already been on the books. A judge had stopped it. Supreme Court of Arizona said no. Kari Lake's losing her mind. The pro-life Republicans we thought were on our side don't seem to so much be on our side, and they're willing to sacrifice the bodies and lives of the preborn in order to get elected. And yet, wow, this is the path forward. The overturning of Roe versus Wade has allowed states like Arizona to say, you know what? We already have a ban as a state law. It goes back to 1864. We're just going to enforce our own laws already on the books. Boom, abortion's banned. We're going to go after each state. This is a strategy. This is the beginning. Buckle up. Are you ready? Unfortunately, very many of the pro-life Republicans we thought were on our side are showing their true colors as they're complaining, whining, moaning, crying that pro-life means all unborn babies should be protected, which means abortion should be banned. And we're going to go after every state until we get a constitutional amendment and ban it at the federal level. Pay attention. Some of these people who use the preborn to get elected actually want to split the baby on this topic. The problem when you split the baby on abortion in order to get elected, you literally split the baby on abortion. Buckle up. Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. States are starting to enforce their pre-Roe v. Wade abortion bans, going back to like the 1800s. Okay, this is the play. This is where we're going. We all knew this would happen. And well, you know, the Democrats and the progressives are just manifesting their inner Moloch. I mean, it's like bulls are coming out of their mouths, right? It's like if you had spiritual eyes, I believe that literally like Baal and Moloch, like literally a bull like demon would be coming out of Nancy Pelosi's brain. You know what I'm talking about? Like Dianne Feinstein. Is she dead yet, by the way? Like literally like a resurrected Baal statue. You know what I'm saying? Like there are literal demon bulls like saying, give me the babies, probably like at the neck and behind the body of every elected Democrat in Congress today. Like that, okay, that's a given. But the pro-life, quote unquote, Republicans are so angry about this. And I've been talking about this for a long, long time, about how many of the people who say they're pro-life aren't really all that pro-life. In fact, as much as often as I get ripped by the quote unquote immediatists, the abolitionists who don't think you should ever accept an incremental victory, never celebrate an incremental victory, only ban abortion in one foul sweep, or anything else is actually apostasy that you need to repent of, right? As much as I get attacked by those people, I've actually been saying for a while that some of these Kari Lake individuals, people that represent what she's saying, are not all that pro-life, right? We know that there are people, we know that there are politicians and groups and organizations who use the bloodshed of the preborn to get elected. We know that. And because we see that how they tend to flip when, I don't know, Roe v. Wade gets overturned and it goes back to the states, right? Or if the New York Times and the liberal establishment Planned Parenthood is lying, like they did in all the money they poured into Kansas, my home state now, to say that if you ban abortion and if it's written out of the state constitution, then women who have miscarried babies in their uterus won't be able to get the baby removed through a DNC because the DNC is technically an abortion. And because it's technically an abortion, then they won't be able to get that procedure, even though the baby already passed away in the womb. And so pro-life Republicans want to make women who have had miscarriages force their baby to rot in their uterus, causing them to die. These were literal talking points that came from Planned Parenthood and the left. And you had pro-life, quote unquote, Republicans saying, oh, yeah, that's horrible, totally buying the lies, and then supporting the agenda of the pro-abortion left. Okay, we know that not everyone is as stalwart and unapologetic of a defender of the lives of precious little babies as some of them say that they are. But this is so exciting. This is so exciting because Arizona, thanks to the Arizona Supreme Court, because a judge had blocked the enforcement of the pre-Roe versus Wade 1864 Arizona ban on abortions, and now the state Supreme Court of Arizona has said no. It can be enforced. There's nothing unconstitutional or wrong with it being enforced. And now, remember Kari Lake? I kind of liked her. In fact, like there's aspects of her I still like. Okay, like I would still pick her over Katie Hobbs, who she ran against, who's now the governor of Arizona. Whole debacle and conversation for another time. But Kari Lake is coming out and saying that this is horrible. And Trump, too. We're going to get to all that in a second. But listen, some of these people literally want to split the baby on abortion. So they celebrate that Roe v. Wade gets overturned, right? Hey, it went back to the states. That's so great. That's why Roe versus Wade was wrong. Not because 65 million babies were murdered and we federalized and legalized abortion at the national federal level through point of birth and funded by the taxpayer. No. That's not why Roe v. Wade was wrong. They say or believe that Roe v. Wade was only wrong because it took the legislative power out of the hands of the state. I'm not even being hyperbolic, y'all. There are Republicans today who call themselves conservatives who say that that's why Roe v. Wade was wrong. Not because it removed personhood from an entire class of human beings, just like the Heathgreech did, the German Supreme Court, and just like Dred Scott v. Sanford did to the black man, remove personhood from a group of actual human beings, an actual class of human beings. No, that's not why it was wrong. It was wrong because the state should be able to decide. Get behind me, Stephen Douglas. Oh, did y'all catch that? Did you not get that one? Stephen Douglas was the, I'm personally opposed to slavery, a Democrat who ran against Abraham Lincoln for the 1860 election, meaning that he thought that we should respect states' rights to determine if the black man is a person or not, whether he should be treated as a person or a slave. Like, let's let the states decide, okay? Like, I might not enslave human beings. I might not whip a black man or child or woman like so much chattel. But hey, if your state wants to determine and rule that they're not persons, that's what we call the blessings of liberty. Welcome to a constitutional republic. We're going to play this video of Trump here to actually tell you exactly what I mean by this, okay? This video that we're going to play in just 1 second represents exactly what I'm talking about. The man who takes credit for, fairly so, by the way, takes credit for getting Roe v. Wade overturned, something I'm very grateful for, and yet really splits the baby in a horrifically bloody way here. Here's Trump's response to Arizona's enforcing their law.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, did Arizona go too far? Did Arizona go too far?
Yeah, they did, and that'll be straightened out. And as you know, it's all about states' rights. That'll be straightened out. And I'm sure that the governor and everybody else are going to bring it back into reason, and that will be taken care of, I think, very quickly.
What do you think about Florida?
Florida's probably maybe going to change also. See, it's all of it's the will of the people. This is what I've been saying. It's a perfect system. So for 52 years, people have wanted to end Roe v. Wade to get it back to the states. We did that. It was an incredible thing, an incredible achievement. We did that, and now the states have it, and the states are putting out what they want. It's the will of the people. So Florida's probably going to change. Arizona's going to definitely change. Everybody wants that to happen. And you're getting the will of the people. It's been pretty amazing when you think.
So there you go, right? That's the will of the people. It's a wonderful thing. That's what makes America great. That's literally what Trump's saying. States' rights. It's a wonderful thing. It's the will of the people. Wait, what? What? What pro-lifers has Trump been listening to? Yes, God used him to overturn Roe versus Wade. I believe that. I believe the 3 Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed to the Supreme Court that led to a 5-4 overturning of Roe versus Wade. I believe that was providential. I believe God used him to do that. God has used wicked kings throughout the scripture to do for him what his own people weren't willing to do or stand for. Okay, credit where credit's due. But geez Louise, who are the pro-life people that Trump is listening to? What pro-lifer do you know that says the reason abortion and Roe v. Wade was wrong was because we didn't let states determine whether they should be able to kill babies or not? I don't know a single serious thinking conservative or pro-lifer who makes that case. The reason it's wrong, yes, that's a byproduct. Yes, that it was removed from the states and that was also bad, but it's also not just to let states decide who's a person and who's not. That was the entire debate. That was part of the entire reason we had a civil war. Was some states said, no, we want to enslave human beings and deny them their rights to personhood. There's nothing just about allowing California, Washington, Oregon, goodness gracious, Michigan, Kansas, to say, well, yeah, none of these, New Mexico, none of these babies are persons. And so we're going to codify and protect killing them through point of birth. Oh, but in Tennessee and in Arizona and in Florida and in Texas, they're a little more protected. Yay, the will of the people. There's nothing just about that. And yes, we celebrate the overturning of Roe versus Wade because now we have more political capital and political power to demand of our elected representatives that they take the slaughter of the unborn seriously, that they make one of their highest political priorities being to ban abortion in their state. And no more excuses from the squishy rhino Mitt Romney Republicans, right? Because one of their get out of jail free cards for nearly 50 years under Roe versus Wade was what? Well, the Supreme Court has spoken, right? Like we can't ban it at the state level without causing a civil war, which of course there's a whole debate about whether that should have happened or not. But the Supreme Court has ruled on this. The power to make those decisions has been taken away from the state representatives. Shrug our shoulders. There's nothing we can do about it. They don't have that excuse anymore. It's gone back to the states. That just puts fuel onto the fire and passion and motivation and direction of the pro-life movement, which is we need a constitutional amendment and we need to get to is it 38 or 42? So I'm sorry. My history is a little rough. The historians will correct me. It's 38 or 42 states to get a constitutional amendment who have banned abortion, who rally together and say this has to be banned at the federal level. Okay, that's where we're going. And the fact that Trump thinks that the reason we as pro-life people didn't like Roe v. Wade is because it took it away from the states is really disappointing. Actually, it's really sad. And we as pro-life people need to be very vocal and loud in letting him know that we are just getting started. The overturning of Roe versus Wade was not the end of the pro-life movement and its passion and commitment. In a very real way, it was actually the beginning of the pro-life movement, because now we're going to be about the entire goal and strategy all along, which is to ban it at the federal level. And of course, that freaks out Media Matters and CNN and MSNBC and ABC and the entire legacy media and the culture of death at our universities and the cultural Marxists that have been strategically placed at tenured universities all across America, and Planned Parenthood and our systems of power and the liberal establishment. Yes, they call that Christian nationalism and a theocracy, and we're going to start murdering people unless they confess of their sins. Nope, not true. We're just wielding for good the reins of power that you have used for wickedness for so long. Right. Constitution, republic, we the people, will of the people. Very well. We will assert the will of the people legislatively at the state level and awaken the church to get back involved until we ban abortion. And the fact that Trump doesn't get that is really disappointing. And by the way, if you notice that the Democrats and the left, they do this very well. They make their opinion and their will and their desires very loudly and clearly known so that Democrat elected representatives get in line, right? They toe the line to make sure that their radical, loud base, whether they're a large percentage or not is beside the point, their radical and loud base doesn't abandon them, doesn't stop voting for them. We need to be as vocal for this issue and for the unborn child as the left has been to get their elected representatives to vote in accordance with their political philosophy and will. Okay? But the one of the most disappointing and ridiculous ones has become Kari Lake. And Kari Lake has sort of come to, unfortunately, I think, represent that conservative Republican who probably has almost never shed a tear or mourned and wept for the slaughter of babies, but uses them as a political leveraging tool so that the very fired up Christian pro-lifers will vote for her. You remember Kari Lake ran against Katie Hobbs as for the governor of Arizona a couple years ago and lost. And there's a whole sketchy story there. We don't have time to get into it. And so she releases this statement, and we have it here for you. And then you remember a couple weeks ago with the IVF thing, she was coming out saying like, oh, Alabama's so bad, I support IVF. Here's what she said. She said, I am not going to DC to legislate an issue that has been returned to the states. It's the Trump position, right? I am going to DC to secure our borders, strengthen our families, and help President Trump make America great again. Strengthen our families. Well, no, you actually want some members of the little members of the family to be allowed to be killed. And so she releases a statement on Arizona Supreme Court. Guys, this is so epic. This is so amazing. Like, this is where we're going. We're going to get more states to either enforce their pre-Roe abortion ban or to exercise enough political will and power at the state level to get the abortion rulings out of the state constitution and ban abortion at as many state levels as we can. But this made Kari Lake very uncomfortable. So, okay, before I read you the rest of her statement, you just need to remember that when she was running for governor of Arizona, she was asked a question. You can go find the video. It was very popular. She was asked a question about her opinion on abortion. And she said, okay, here's what she said. She said, I support saving as many lives as possible. I support saving as many lives as possible. And then she asked the press, why don't you ask Katie Hobbs about her position on abortion? Because she supports abortions through the third trimester, through point of birth. That's radical and out of touch with the American people. Why don't you ask her that? I find it interesting that you haven't asked her that. Hey, point well taken. I get it. But she positioned herself as this very pro-life person saying, I support saving as many lives as possible and helping and supporting women. What she really meant was, I support killing as many babies as possible to get elected. That's what Kari Lake actually meant, because here's her statement. She says, regarding Arizona and all this stuff, she said, I speak to more Arizonans than anyone else. I'm the only woman or mother in this race. I understand the fear and anxiety. Remember, she's running for Senate. I wholeheartedly agree with President Trump. This is a very personal issue that should be determined by each individual state and her people. I oppose today's rulings. There it is. I oppose the ruling allowing a law that's already on the books. She celebrated the overturning of Roe. She celebrated that it went back to the states. But now that her state, Arizona, is enforcing a law already on the books. Do you understand this? This judge who had blocked the enforcement of the Arizona pre-Roe abortion ban law was overruled by the Supreme Court because that's the law. And now Kari Lake, is very angry about this. And she's saying, I'm going to work with Katie Hobbs, the governor that she hates, who won against her, and state legislature, she says, to come up with an immediate common sense solution that Arizonans can support. Ultimately, Arizona voters will make the decision on the ballot come November. Okay. And then she says, I got to protect IVF and all this stuff. Okay. So the woman who celebrated the overturning of Roe versus Wade ain't so happy that Roe v. Wade got overturned when her state is saying, boom, time to ban abortion. And the law's already on the books. It's already written down. It hasn't been overruled. It hasn't been written out of the state constitution. And now that makes her very uncomfortable. Why? Because I am willing, says Kari Lake allegedly, to kill as many babies as possible to get elected. And Trump has said this as well. You may have seen some of his recent comments about how basically being too pro-life is costing the grand old party at the ballot box. Prioritizing banning abortion, it's hurting us at the ballot box. So, hey, sacrifice the preborn on the altar of political expediency. By the way, does the left ever do this? Do they ever cave and make compromises? I'm talking about on their core pagan secular sacraments, okay? Not some of their peripheral political disagreements, right? Like Bernie Sanders or whatever. By the way, in Vermont, there's a reason why he doesn't go after, did you know Vermont is an open carry state? There's a reason why Bernie Sanders, the communist, socialist, Marxist weirdo, doesn't ever talk about gun rights, because his Democrat Vermont voters actually like to walk around open carrying their guns, so he won't touch on it. There's some of those other peripheral political disagreements that they're kind of silent on. They'll set aside, whatever, right? Live to fight another day. Not on the sexualization of children, right? Not on transing the kids, not on killing babies in the womb. They won't give an inch on those issues. And it's helped them win over the long haul. Are we going to take a page out of the strategy of the radical left and the Democrat Party and the secular progressive moral revolutionaries, or not? They have been more effective than us at this strategy. These people. Oh, and of course, and then Trump saying, the rape babies, the incest babies, right? We have to have those exceptions. By the way, as someone who will support incremental legislation, I understand that someone who wants to ban abortion at the state level and is trying, but doesn't have the votes to pass an abortion ban and send it to the governor's desk, I understand why a credible, wonderful, committed, non-compromised pro-life legislator might put the rape or incest exception into the bill to get those 2, 3, 4, or 5 more votes he needs to get the bill passed, protect a bunch of unborn babies, and then go after getting rid of the rape and incest objections later. I understand I would support that when it comes down to if you need to save some lives instead of saving no lives because you want to protect your political purity and never putting in an exception to an abortion, a pro-life bill. I get that. But Trump's saying we need these exceptions. Rape and incest babies need to be killed. It's evil. And the left never caves on these things on the altar of political expediency. They double and triple down until they get what they want. They're like whining little petulant spoiled children who eventually are given a candy bar. And we need to be as uncompromising and loud for our convictions when it comes to this issue. So, what's the history behind this? Well, did you know there was a time when the American Medical Association wanted to ban abortion and was pro life? Yes, the AMA, the American Medical Association, which is fully pro abortion now. I believe they went fully in for killing babies and abandoning their commitment to protect preborn lives in like 1967, I believe was the year. But back in the 1800s, the American Medical Association had an entire crusade against abortion, and it was called the Physicians' Crusade Against Abortion. It started in 1857, so just before this Arizona abortion ban, and the goal was to urge states to pass anti-abortion laws. And there's this individual who was behind a paper and later publishes a book that was instrumental in getting states to ban abortion. And his name is Dr. Horatio Storer. And the New York Times has this new hit piece about how he's like, they're like, the American Medical Association was all white men. No, no. And then they're trying to get rid of women's rights. And it was all a facade and fake or whatever. And Dr. Horatio Storer wrote a paper against abortion that was adopted by the American Medical Association and was later published in a book called On Criminal Abortion in America. And I actually have, I think, a copy. I have a copy online of the book because it's out of print. And it was published as a book in 1868 called Criminal Abortion, Its Nature, Its Evidence, and Its Law. And there's an interesting line here that the left and the New York Times and the scientific establishments that you can definitely trust to give you the science today don't want you to know. And it's about how long we've known when human life begins. And there's a reason why I want to read this to you, because we ultimately we're at a crossroads now. Okay, in the fight for life and in the Republican Party, which we have to begin asking fundamental questions again, because you have the Kari Lakes, right? You have Trump, you have the Mitt Romneys, you have the Lindsey Grahams, you have these people who say they're pro-life, but they're willing to offer up the preborn immediately if they think it will help them at the ballot box. And so we have to define what a conservative is again. We have to define what it means to be pro-life. What does it mean to be a human being? Where do rights come from? Do we all get human rights? Like fundamental questions again. We have to revisit now again in the conservative movement and on the Seth Gruber Show because of people like Kari Lake. And so, listen, there's this great line from this book. Again, this was published by the American Medical Association's Committee on Criminal Abortion. Here's what Dr. Horatio Storer said back when the AMA was pro-life. He said, quote, "Physicians have now arrived at the unanimous opinion that the fetus in utero is alive from the very moment of conception. They said the willful killing of a human being at any stage of its existence is murder." This was 1868, and was part of the campaign before that called the Physicians' Crusade Against Abortion to get states like Arizona to ban abortion. And by 1880, about 40 states had banned abortion. Arizona enacted its ban in 1864 as part of its legal code. And the law reads as follows. The law that is being now enforced in Arizona, because it's Arizona state law, for goodness sake, reads as follows. A person who provides, supplies, or administers to a pregnant woman or procures such women to take any medicine, drugs, or substance, or uses or employs any instrument or other means whatever with intent thereby to procure the miscarriage of such woman, unless it is necessary to save her life, shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for not less than 2 years, nor more than 5 years. A person who provides, supplies, or administers to a pregnant woman. Now, I actually go further than many pro-lifers, and I actually believe that it is fully just to prosecute men and women who pay someone else to kill their baby. Okay. Now, listen, it's interesting here because of RU486 and the abortion pill. Anyone who provides, supplies, or administers, okay, well, many times, or procures, okay, well, in many cases now, and how we're looking at over half of abortions in America now being the abortion pill, which is procured by the mother who helps kill her baby. It's not like she's going to an abortionist and say, you do it. She does it herself. Regardless, the question is this: what's wrong with a law that says it's wrong and illegal to kill innocent human beings? And if you kill or help kill an innocent human being, you will be punished. That there's actual penalties. Like, just if a mother like drowned her toddler in the bathtub or paid someone else to drown her kid in the pond, she wouldn't get off scot-free, right? Pro-lifers wouldn't say, I'm so glad we only have laws going after people who are paid by parents to drown their toddlers, but we never go after the parent who paid the person to drown their toddler. No, we would expect those parents to also be held criminally responsible and liable. I support that. I don't support going after men and women who got abortions when it was legal after it's become illegal and retroactively punishing them. I think that's completely wrong and unjust. It doesn't change the immorality of what was done, but it is unjust to say, hey, you did this thing when it was legal, but now it's illegal, so we're going to throw you in jail. I don't support that at all. But I do think it's important to punish, to have criminal liabilities, to have criminal punishments for people who kill their babies or pay someone else to kill their babies. Because if we don't, we're abandoning the whole pro-life case, actually. Because what's the pro-life case? It's always wrong to intentionally kill innocent human beings. And the unborn child is an innocent human being because human life begins at the moment of conception. So therefore, it's wrong. And therefore, if we say that the preborn child is equal in value, dignity, and rights to the infant and the toddler, then why should the preborn child not have the same protections as the infant or toddler does? Do you understand this? Because our whole pro-life case rests on the fact, assumes the fact, is based on the argument that the preborn child in the womb is equal in dignity, rights, and value to the infant and the toddler. In which case, the penalties for murdering the baby in the womb ought to be similar or equal to the crimes of murdering the infant. And then people say, oh, Seth, what are you saying? A 17-year-old who's pressured or forced by her father to kill the baby should be thrown in jail or hung in the public square? No, of course not. We have a legal system to determine how all these things happen. Obviously, a minor who's forced by her own father to get an abortion is treated completely differently in a court of law than a 22-year-old who gets an abortion because she just wants to have more sex and doesn't want to have to go through the physical experience of being pregnant. Okay? We have a legal system. We have courts to go through this, but there do needs to be penalties. And we used to recognize that. The American Medical Association, for goodness sake, in the 1850s and 60s, calling the killing of babies in the womb murder and saying that it was unanimous amongst physicians that human life begins at the moment of conception. Goodness gracious. In the 1860s and 50s, unanimous that we knew when human life begins. Okay? So, what is the baby? What is a baby? What is a conservative? What is a human being? A human being is an individual who is part of the species Homo sapiens. I know, shocker. They have human DNA. And so because they're a human being, they have human rights. And yes, it's probably worth saying that only Christianity or a Judeo-Christian worldview can even furnish this idea of objective rights in the first place. And our founders recognized that. That's why they said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're created equal, endowed by our creator, that right? A higher power. Those rights come from outside of us, endowed by our creator with inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You remove the lawgiver, the divine logos, the divine logic of the universe, the creator, then we're just in a power play for who can have more rights and who can deny other people rights to increase our power, our money, our influence, whatever. Okay? So human beings have human rights, not based on their function, but because they were endowed with those rights, which means you don't have to earn them. It was 1973 that we ripped the term human and person apart. We said that, well, we know they're humans. Right? I could show you a book by who would become Planned Parenthood's president, Alan Guttmacher, when he said in his book Life in the Making that we all knew human life began at the moment of conception. Or go back to this book 1868. We all know human life begins at the moment of conception. We used to understand that being human was all you needed to have rights, to have human rights. But what did 1973, what did Roe v. Wade say? Functionally, what it said was being human is no longer enough to have human rights. We know you're human. We know you're one of us. We know you have human DNA, but you're not a person. So you don't get those personhood rights yet. Well, where do they come from? How can I get some of those rights, huh? Well, how you function. You have to meet our litmus test, right? So then the preborn child is denied certain rights, namely the right to life, because they don't perform or function in a certain way. What's the problem with this? Because these functions all come in varying degrees. What does the pro-choicer say? You know the pro-choice arguments. Let me recount them for you. The baby's not self-aware. They're not conscious. They don't have any desires, right? They're not even aware of themselves as a unique individual. So until those functions are realized or can be exercised, then it's not a person, but it may be a human. So it's like, well, we've done that before. All right, we've done that before. We've denied personhood to humans that we knew were humans before. Warning, warning, warning. Okay, but that's what we did in Roe versus Wade in 1973. So now we hand over power to the state to determine for us what we used to allow human nature to determine for us. If you are a human, you're in. You're in, right? That's equal rights. The pro-lifer, not the Kari Lake pro-lifer, okay? The Seth Gruber pro-lifer, the you pro-lifer, you are actually the equality advocate because you are rejecting human plus categories. Let me be clear, the entire pro-abortion movement and the left today is an advocate of human plus categories. And by the way, so is every eugenicist maniac of the 20th century. Mussolini, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, okay? Adolf Hitler. Okay, human plus Aryan, human plus white, human plus high IQ, human plus not disabled. Do you understand? Human plus not a gypsy. Okay, no. We as pro-life Christians say if you're human, you're in. You get rights. So as soon as you say being human is not enough, then you've got to define what's the new category, what's the new requirement to get these quote unquote rights. And here's where it becomes such a contradiction. Here's where the hypocrisy is so blatant, okay? And I'm talking about Kari Lake. I'm talking about Mitt Romney. I'm talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about the people, the Lindsey Grahams, okay? The people who say they're pro-life Reagan conservatives, right? who want to ban abortion. They'll say they want to ban abortion. But here's where the hypocrisy shows itself. People like Kari Lake, like in that statement I told you when she went after Katie Hobbs and says, why don't you ask Katie Hobbs about the fact that she supports abortion through point of birth? Oh, so you don't like abortion through point of birth, right? You've heard these rhino Republicans who say they're conservatives. We've all heard them. We can play all the clips for you if you'd like, saying it's atrocious and disgusting that the Democrats support abortion through point of birth, right? Have you heard these people? Oh my gosh, that's atrocious. Do you remember when Trump debated Hillary in the 2016 election? Do you remember that? And he said, she, meaning Hillary, supports the right of abortion in the 9th month. And he said to rip a baby out of its mother's womb. By the way, it's very rhetorically correct, right? I appreciated that. What was Trump saying? He says, I think that's disgusting. And because he, like most of these rhino Republicans, understand that the American culture and even squishy pro-lifers, right? Squishy pro-lifers who don't really want to ban abortion, they still hate the idea of third trimester abortions. By the way, there's Gallup polling on this. I've talked about it on the show before. Gallup poll in 2019 polled Americans, not Republicans or Democrats, just Americans, on their support of abortion in the various trimesters. Only 13% of America thinks abortion should be legal in the 3rd trimester. 13% of the country thinks it should be legal in the 3rd trimester, 6, 7, or 7, 8th, and 9th, the 9th month. Okay. So the Kari Lakes, they know this. So they go, that's disgusting and atrocious. But what? But you support killing babies earlier. And you definitely have it out for the rape and incest babies. Have you noticed that? About the weak, wimpy, or woke Republicans who say they're pro-life? Like I said, I understand putting in a rape exception in a bill after months of trying to get an abortion ban, but you needed those 4 more votes. And so you'll go after getting rid of the exception later. I understand that. But I'm talking about the people who are like, oh, no, we have to put exceptions in. Or they don't even think that we should ban abortion. They think that it should not be banned, but it should be legal in the first trimester and for rape and incest. Then these people have to explain to America why killing third trimester babies is so atrocious and disgusting and evil, but killing them in the first trimester is a blessing of liberty and makes you a Reagan conservative or some crap. Do you understand what I'm saying? If being human is no longer enough to get those rights, namely the right to life, then where do they come from and how do you get them? Thank you to our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper. Every Life Diaper is the pro-life diaper company in America. There's only one pro-life diaper company in America. Every Life is how you defund the pro-abortion industry and the culture of death. Who is having the most babies in America? Pro-lifers. Where do they get their diapers? From pro-abortion diaper companies who rhetorically or financially support the abortion industry. It's crazy. You got to use your wallet to build and fight for the kind of culture you want, guys. We gotta defund a culture of death before we rebuild a culture of life. Amen. Make sure you and your church nursery and your family, your nieces, your nephews, your grandkids, your kids, you and your local pregnancy center are getting your diapers from Every Life Diaper. Me and my family use them. They're great. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10, Seth10 for 10% off your first order, 10% off your first order, and let them know that we sent you. Everylife.com. And if you sign up for a membership, you get it shipped every month and you save a little money. Everylife.com. Support the only pro-life diaper company in America. Let's love babies by funding those who want to protect them. Because apparently the third trimester child has a right to life. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? So 13%, so 77% of Americans, no, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. 87% of Americans believe that the third trimester baby has a right to life, and killing that child should be illegal. That means banned. But most Americans support abortion in the first trimester. So what magically happened to the development and status of the baby in their mother's womb between the first trimester that made it okay to kill them and that you think should remain legal, and then the third trimester baby where they suddenly got the right to life? You have to explain what happened there, Kari Lake. You have to explain to us what was the magical journey somewhere in the second trimester or late first trimester that allowed that child to become a rights-bearing individual. And they can never answer that question, and no pro-choicer can ever answer that question. They can't, because they know that it becomes totally arbitrary, because if the functions like self-awareness, consciousness, desires, cortical brain activity, brain waves become the status and way you earn personhood and a right to life, then we endanger human rights outside of the uterus as well. Do you understand that? Lincoln talked about this when he was debating against the Stephen Douglases, who thought that states should be able to determine their slavery laws, just like these Republicans think that states should be able to determine their abortion laws. Lincoln addressed these people, and he said that they were putting in place the premises that justified their own enslavement. Here's what he said. Lincoln said in a famous speech in Chicago, he said, "What are these arguments?" He's talking about the pro-slavery arguments. He says, "What are these arguments? These are the arguments that kings have made for enslaving the people in all ages of the world. Turn it whatever way you will, whether it come from the mouth of the men of one race as a reason for enslaving the men of another race. It is all the same old serpent." And he said, and I hold that if that course of argumentation, which is made for convincing the public that we should not care about this issue, is granted, it does not stop with the Negro. He said, I should like to know if taking this old Declaration of Independence, which declares that all men are equal upon principle, and we begin making exceptions to it, where will it stop? Honest Abe said, if one man says it does not mean the Negro, why not another man say it does not mean some other man? Let me paraphrase what Lincoln meant there. He's saying these arguments that some people are not really like us and they're not really persons have been made by monarchs and kings and individuals across the entire spectrum of human history. whatever way you look at it, it's all the same old serpent. It's all the same old sinister lie. And he said, this declaration says we're equal. We're equal upon principle because we're humans. So if we begin making exceptions to those endowed rights that all humans have, then one man can say that those rights weren't meant to protect the black man. And then another man can say that those protections were not meant to be included for another class of human beings. He was saying that by entertaining the premises that justified slavery, the slave owner was actually putting in place the premises that would later justify his own enslavement. And he said this beautifully. Oh man, please send this episode to Kari Lake, for goodness sakes. Lincoln said it beautifully in a paper he wrote on a fragment of paper called Fragments on Slavery. And you would hear Abe Lincoln's reasoning here come out in his debates against Stephen Douglas, in the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates, as they were both running for president. And he said, in this sort of imagined debate, like he was preparing to debate a slavery supporter, Lincoln said, so hey, you say A is white and B is black. So it is color then, the lighter having the right to enslave the darker. Take care, by this rule, you are to be a slave to the first man you meet with a skin fairer than your own. But you say it is a question of intellect, that whites are intellectually the superiors of blacks and therefore have the right to enslave them. Take care again, by this rule, you are to be a slave to the first man you meet with a skin fairer than your own. But Lincoln said, but you say it is a question of interest. And if you as a slave owner can make it in your interest, you have the right to enslave another. Very well. And if he can make it in his interest, he has the right to enslave you. What's Lincoln saying? That by giving quarter to, supporting the status quo of slavery, slave owners were themselves supporting premises and assumptions that could later be turned around to justify enslaving the plantation owner himself. He was saying that your argument, slave owner, is that the black man is not a person and doesn't get personhood rights because of his skin color or his IQ. But those functions or accidental properties are different amongst all humans. So what happens if you ground human rights on things that we don't share equally? Then human rights are not shared equally. Let me say that again. What happens if you base and ground your arguments for human rights in things that we don't share equally, in things that come in varying degrees? Then it follows that rights come in varying degrees. So the albino rules over all, and the person with the highest IQ is more of a person than anyone with a lower IQ than him. Putting in place the premises that justify your own enslavement. So if the first trimester baby, Kari Lake, or the rape and incest baby is not a person and doesn't get rights because what? Why? They're humans. Well, you see, they don't have certain functions or capacities yet that we think they need to have because we know the third trimester baby is a little more self-aware and we can measure their brain waves and they look more like me, and so I don't really want to kill them. But the first trimester baby doesn't look as much like me yet, and they're not conscious or self-aware yet. You see, these are functions. It's a functional view of humans and human rights, not one that's based on endowment. You've been endowed with rights, so no one can take them away. If you grant those premises, anyone can be disqualified from the community of persons. Old granny, your grandma or grandpa on life support, whose brainwaves can no longer be measured, who's no longer self-aware of themselves as the person that they are. Can they be killed too for lacking the same functional personhood qualification that the preborn child lacks? And by the way, that's why Peter Singer, the most famous philosopher to defend abortion, is consistent and says, yeah, we should be able to kill infants, he actually says, and old people, because he says the infant doesn't yet have those same personhood conferring capacities that Peter Singer, says the preborn child has to meet before they're a person. And so both the infant and the unborn child are both not persons. And he's consistent. He's willing to admit what I'm trying to warn you, Kari Lake and other Republicans, which is if you give quarter to, if you tolerate, or worse yet, if you celebrate the ideology that says some of these babies in the womb are not persons and can be killed, Don't be surprised if one day you wake up and that same status conferring qualities for personhood is being warped and reshaped in a way to deny you rights of personhood before the law. It's happened before, it will happen again. Those who murder the unborn cannot be trusted to govern the born. And those who murder the unborn will one day murder you too, the longer you tolerate the same ideology that has resulted in more bloodshed in the 20th century than all the murderers, warlords, and criminals of the previous history before the year 1900 combined. The ideology of eugenics, the ideology of the humanistic moral revolution that does not believe in endowed rights, but believes your rights are determined by the whim of the state, who can define you out of existence if they want to. Because we no longer allowed our human nature to inform our view of rights, are being created in the image of God to inform our protection of the value and dignity of human beings. No, no, no. We gave that power over to the state now because I guess being human is no longer enough, said Roe v. Wade, said Dred Scott v. Sanford, said the German Supreme Court. We're committing the most atrocious, dangerous mistakes of human history, and it's happening before your very eyes. And why is it that we can't even find a handful of Republican, conservative, pro-lifers who won't give an inch to this secular eugenics moral revolution? You know, Chesterton talked about these people, one of my favorite men of the 20th century, mainly because he was the prophetic voice warning the West against the Sangerites, against the Darwinians, against the Galtons, against the Eugenics Society. You understand? He wrote a book called Eugenics and Other Evils. Chesterton did, warning people about the eugenics revolution that was starting to build. He once said if Darwinism was the doctrine of the survival of the fittest, then eugenics was the doctrine of the survival of the nastiest. Exactly. And he wrote in the Illustrated London News on April 19th, 1924. 1924. Goodness gracious, 100 years ago, y'all. He had Kari Lake's number in 1924. And I'm using her right now as a stand-in for the weak and wimpy Republicans who use the preborn child as a political cudgel or leveraging tool to get elected. Okay? I'm talking about more people than just her. And Chesterton had their number 100 years ago. This is what I mean when I say these people are literally trying to split the baby on abortion. But that's the problem. When you try to split the baby on the topic of abortion, you actually end up literally splitting the baby on the topic of abortion. Those babies end up being murdered because I guess they're not valuable enough for you to prioritize in your political protections as you're trying to be elected to the US Senate, Kari Lake. Here's what Chesterton said. He said, the business of progressives is to keep making mistakes. The business of conservatives is to prevent the mistakes from being corrected. Whoa. The business of conservatives is to prevent the mistakes from being corrected. Even when, he says, the revolutionist might himself repent of his revolution, the traditionalist is already defending it as a part of his tradition. What does that mean? It means Kari Lake and Donald Trump and Mitt Romney. It means by the time the revolutionaries start to go, oh, wait, maybe we went too far, the would-be conservatives and traditionalists are already defending the new iterations of the culture of death that would have been completely unacceptable 50 years ago as a part of conservative tradition, right? That's why you get like governors like Asa Hutchinson. Do you remember him? Who said that like he was like we have to protect like the sexual mutilation of children as parental rights, and we shouldn't be getting involved in healthcare decisions of parents who want to trans their own kids. Well, you remember David French, who was celebrated as a conservative thought leader 15 years ago, who's an idiot now, who's like in Rob Reiner's new film about the dangers of Christians being Christians, the dangers of Christian nationalism, getting involved in politics. And David French, who called Drag Queen Story Hour a blessing of liberty. You see what Chesterton means? The traditionalist is already defending the revolutionist mistakes as a part of conservative tradition. And so Chesterton says, thus we have the two great types. the advanced person who rushes us into ruin, and the retrospective person who admires the ruins. Wow. Wow. Is Kari Lake not admiring the ruins of the devastation of Roe versus Wade? But at least it's overturned now, right? Trump going, it's a states thing, the will of the people, states' rights, woo! Defending the devastation of the progressives' revolution as now a part of conservative tradition. Oh my gosh! The slippery slope. We end up just imbibing whatever the revolutionaries built and then defending it as part of conservatism. That's why you have conservatives now who say, oh, gay marriage. Woo! I'm a conservative. What? That's the fundamental building block of society. The marriage, the union of man and a woman, is the only thing that can furnish the children's rights to their mother and father. That institution was to protect children and the flourishing of the next generation. And now conservatives say a bedrock conservative principle is celebrating sodomy and just the Supreme Court decision that Obergefell, right? Gay marriage. And now 2 men and 2 women. Well, it's superfluous, right? Gender is superfluous. So we don't really know the qualitative difference between 2 daddies and 2 mommies and a mommy and a daddy. We don't even know that anymore. Woo! Welcome to the conservative tradition. Wow, Chesterton, 100 years ago. You know what? There's a very interesting admission from the United Nations that's actually an interesting argument against what's happening right now, okay? Against this obsession with defending states' rights to abortion by conservatives who call themselves pro-life. But when you call yourself pro-life, you're saying what you're saying, whether you believe it or not, what you're saying when you say you're pro-life is that the baby in the womb is a person and has the same rights and dignity and value as the infant, the toddler, the teenager, and the grandma and grandpa. So therefore, they deserve the same legal protections. And what is a legal protection? If you have a legal protection, it means that when those protections are violated, there's consequences. That's the whole point of a legal protection, right? So women have a right to not be raped. So if you rape a woman, you're thrown in jail. And I'm willing to entertain policies, by the way, to cut his testicles off, throw him in jail for life. You have a legal right. Therefore, when it's violated, there's consequences. If the baby has a right to life, then there has to be what? Consequences and punishments for killing them, which the American Medical Association used to call murder, used to call killing the baby in the womb murder. Okay, so there's an interesting admission by the United Nations of all groups. I know, the United Nations, on their covenant on civil and political rights. That is an interesting way, I think, to counter the insanity of the conservative rush to defend the progressives' revolution as part of their tradition and say every state should decide if babies are murdered or if they're persons. And the United Nations has really architected, funded, and ushered in so much of the rot of the sexual revolution in the 20th century and increasingly in the 21st century. But the United Nations Covenant on Civil and Political Rights says this. Listen to this. They say, in countries where the death penalty is permitted, the death penalty may never be done on a pregnant woman. Let me say that again. In countries where the death penalty is permitted, the death penalty may never be done on a pregnant woman. Hamina. A lot of questions we could ask about that. Wait a second. This is something you're saying that should be recognized as international law, internationally respected then, UN? But wait a second. What distinguishes a pregnant woman who has committed a crime her state would say is worthy of the death penalty from a non-pregnant woman who has committed a crime her state says is worthy of the death penalty? What spares the one woman from being killed when another woman who has committed the same crime in the same place will be killed? I'm sorry, am I asking questions too deep for Kari Lake? Are the rhinos too triggered right now? Are you okay? Do you need a safe space in the progressives' revolution? You useful idiots, to quote Lenin. You useful idiots. You're just used as tools in the progressive revolutionaries' toolkit to further their ideology, and they will toss you out like so many unwanted babies the second you're no longer useful. So, what explains or distinguishes the disparate treatment between the pregnant woman who's committed a crime worthy of the death penalty and the non-pregnant woman who's committed a crime worthy of the death penalty? Why should the death penalty never be given to a pregnant woman, United Nations? Because in the body of one of those guilty women is an innocent human being. So there's the acknowledgement by the United Nations of all groups that we don't kill innocent human beings. Oh, but I really want the rape objection. I'm sorry, exception. I really want the rape exception. I really want the babies conceived in rape to be allowed to be killed. Hey, I'm a pro-lifer. Hey, I'm Mitt Romney. I'm Kari Lake. I want to save as many lives as possible, she said when she was running for governor. But I actually want to kill as many babies as possible in order to get elected. So the babies conceived in rape shouldn't get protections. Wait, why? I thought there's the acknowledgement that we don't kill innocent human beings. You don't punish children. You don't kill children for the crimes of their father. The unborn child is always innocent. Pretty simple, huh? Man, I wonder what United Nations progressive revolutionary was smoking the devil's lettuce. Little of that Haitian oregano, right? While they were writing this. Interesting how truth sometimes reasserts itself in the end. In fact, this is the great conservative consolation, that reality will always reassert itself in the end. And when it does, it will slap you in the face. And when reality slaps you in the face, it would do well for you to not blame your political opponents, but to blame your own worldview and ideology. When you don't like the consequences of your worldview, you should abandon your worldview and find one that better explains the world we live in. If you don't like the fact that, a man who murders a pregnant woman is charged with 2 counts of homicide, even though the baby might be in a state that has codified abortion and made it legal. So if you kill a pregnant woman, you're guilty of murdering 2 people. But if that mother wants to go take her own unborn child to be killed, she's just exercising healthcare rights. Wait, what? If you don't like the contradictions of your own philosophy, find a new philosophy. And the United Nations of all the groups putting the icing on the cupcake for us by saying, oh yeah, pregnant women guilty of a crime deserving of the death penalty cannot be given the death penalty. Because why? Because it's a human being. Abortion is not healthcare because pregnancy is not a disease and babies aren't tumors. That baby is a human being with a right to life. Seth, you're such a Christian nationalist theocrat. Are you really saying that a woman who just finds out she's pregnant and gets an abortion in like week 4 should be guilty of murdering an innocent human being? Well, let me flip the script on you. If you don't like killing 3rd trimester babies, abortions, killing babies in the 9th month, then you tell me how that child got the rights that the 1st trimester baby doesn't get. I don't have to answer that question. You have to answer the question of what's a human? Right? Matt Walsh, what is a woman? We need a document. I'm going to do a documentary called What is a Human Being? How about what is a baby? What is a baby? You need to answer those. Where do rights come from? Do all human beings get rights or only some? You answer those questions to explain your atrocious celebration of killing babies really little at the earlier stage, but then abhorring and opposing later term abortions. It's the same human. It's just at different stages of its physical development. You explain to me the weird, kooky, like magical line you've drawn and where it is and why that line, when the baby crosses over it, suddenly gets rights. I don't need to answer the question. You have to answer the weird, kooky, feminist, magical science you have. Whereas the child gets a little bigger, suddenly it becomes wrong to kill them, but totally okay in the 1st trimester. These are the questions I wish someone would ask Kari Lake. These are the questions I wish someone would ask Donald Trump. What are we dealing with? We're dealing with the most fundamental question of all, which is, what does it mean to be a human being? And who counts as one of us? Who counts as one of us? Who's included in this thing called humanity? Do we all get the rights equally? Or do the strong get to determine what rights the weak may or may not get. The elite and those with power determining who gets rights and who doesn't. Is that the kind of world that you want to live in? The longer we follow the revolutionaries and the destruction they've caused that's now being absorbed as a part of conservative tradition, the sooner we will find that every other right we've taken for granted has disappeared. A conservative movement that does not prioritize the complete and total abolition of abortion as its highest political priority will one day wake up and find that there is nothing left to conserve. If you don't get the right to life right, you won't get any other rights right? Lincoln once said, in giving freedom to the slave, we ensure freedom to the free. In other words, only by ensuring freedom for everyone and granting freedom to everyone can we ensure that we ourselves will be free in the future. We might paraphrase Lincoln today by saying, in giving life to the preborn, we ensure life to the born. Only by granting the right to life to all human beings, innocent human beings. You can lose your right to life, by the way. If you are a murderer who rapes and murders little girls, you can be killed by the state. I'm saying innocent human beings. In granting life to everyone, we ensure and preserve life for ourselves. So the longer we've tolerated the murder and depersoning of the preborn, the quicker we found that the revolution is beginning to eat other, quote unquote, weak, unfit people as well. There's a reason why Hillary Clinton talked about the deplorables and irredeemables, right? The people that she believed were the morons and the misfits, the MAGA Trump, the idiots, the backwoods voter, silent majority idiots, which is why recently, a few months ago, by the way, Hillary Clinton said, we need to consider a formal deprogramming of MAGA Trump supporters. I'm not kidding. On national television, she said, we need to consider a formal deprogramming. I'm actually quoting her, of Trump supporters. There's a word for that. They're called gulags. They're called gulags, where you send your political opponents and dissidents to go be re-educated. Something that Jordan Peterson is being put through right now in Canada. Got to be re-educated. Got to take re-education courses. How long until those re-education courses happen in locked buildings that you're not allowed to escape from? Right? Oh, Seth, you're such a conspiracy theorist. That's such a weird thing to say. I'm not listening to the Seth Gruber Show anymore. Okay, there's 6 pro-life sidewalk counselors in the Nashville area right now who were singing psalms. They opened up their Bible and they sang some psalms outside of an abortion clinic in a hallway inside a building, and we're sort of outside the door a little bit. And they're being charged, and they're facing up to 11 years in prison. 11 years in prison to go be re-educated, you stupid pro-lifers. Do you see that the longer you tolerate that form of evil, the babies aren't a person, they can be killed, and we're going to force you to fund it with your tax dollars, the sooner we're finding that evil is not remaining isolated in its attack on the preborn, it's emanating out. It's rippling out and affecting other people as well who dare speak up for the unborn and the family and the social fabric of America. Do you see how this all goes? Man, with Republicans like Kari Lake, who needs Democrats? We need courageous, unyielding, unapologetic, pro-life politicians and legislators who will be as unapologetic and unyielding for the protection of our most innocent brothers and sisters in the womb as the other side has been to attack and wipe out the image of God from the earth. Do not let the weak, woke, and wimpy Republicans try to figure out a way to split the baby on abortion, because when you do that, you literally split the baby on abortion. Thank you guys for joining the Seth Gruber Show today. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble. Will you give us a subscribe at Rumble? We've been thrown in YouTube jail a couple times. Got close to being banned forever. It might happen eventually. Go to Rumble. iTunes, please, if you haven't done this, hit 5 stars, leave us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. The White Rose Resistance is the fastest growing pro-life organization in America, and we are reawakening and mobilizing the church in America to reassert her spiritual obligation to lead the way. Y'all, the politicians ain't coming to save us. It's going to take an awakening of God's people standing for life and truth and righteousness. Again, we are the organization explaining the evils that have happened, how it happened, so we can reverse engineer this crap, reverse engineer this culture of death. Chesterton once said that we are perpetually being told that what is wanted is a strong man who will do things, but what is really wanted is a strong man who will undo things. And that will be the real test of strength. We at the White Rose Resistance are trying to undo the revolution that has been created, to give God a reason to show America mercy, to protect the most youngest, silent, and innocent amongst us. That's the gospel lived out. If that ain't gospel work, I don't know what is. Go to thewhiterose.life. Will you sign up as an ally at $35 a month? We want tens of thousands of Christians across America signing up at $35 a month. You get a resistance box to equip you to be the resistance. You join our digital community with pro-life courses. Hang out with me, live calls just for the allies, you being the resistance. And $70 a month, you get our book club. So we read a book together once a month. It's super fun. We had a bunch of people on the other day. We've had Eric Metaxas on live to talk about his book. We had Dr. George Grant to talk about his biography on Margaret Sanger, Killer Angel. It's super exciting. It's a way for you to get mobilized and equipped to engage in the culture of death, against the culture of death. $70 a month at our air support level. You join that. We hang out live on Zoom. It's super fun. Go to thewhiterose.life. Join the fastest growing pro-life organization in America so we can put ourselves out of a job by getting the church to do what they should have always been doing. Thewhiterose.life, SethGruber.com to catch my speaking tour. We will see you on the battlefield. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. This is The Seth Gruber Show.